euphoria makes it easier to bear. You can watch your feelings with the detachment of an observer, like you're floating above them on some cloud. It's ironic that junkies chase junk because they're running away from pain. But the restlessness is just how the sickness starts. Then comes the clamminess, the cold sweats, the body aches, the nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. All this starts because you're trying to run away from pain. But after that high fades, as it always does, you're stuck picking up the pieces, dealing with the shit you did in order to get high. The empty promises, the people you ripped off, the relationships you fucked. All this to run away from pain. But you never really get away from it. It's like running in circles. You only get back to where you started. If anything, it just makes it worse. Of course, I wasn't thinking any of this at the time. I listened calmly as the doctor explained that I had an abscess and how the infection had spread to my bloodstream. She told me that if I believed in anything, I should pray that the infection hadn't reached my heart lining because then I'd be dead. She gave me a half-cocked smile while looking over the track marks on my arms and told me that I was lucky to be alive. Funny, at the time, I didn't feel especially lucky. Then she started lecturing me on the dangers of heroin, telling me that I was too smart, too young to use drugs. She told me horror stories of addiction, a woman who came in after a crack pipe shattered inside her vagina, a man who had a stroke after overdosing on meth, people whose hearts stopped after shooting heroin. I listened to all this with a sense of detachment. I think she expected me to feel grateful to be alive or scared at the prospect of death, but I didn't feel anything. Death didn't alarm me. I was young and I considered myself fearless. Her stories were grisly, but I had been around the streets, had grown up in the punk scene. I'd watched friends drink themselves to death, overdose, or worse. Besides, you had to care about something to be afraid of losing it. I distanced myself from my feelings so much that I had almost convinced myself that there was nothing I cared about. Besides getting high. Still, I listened to her warnings with as much gravity and attentiveness as I could muster, but in my head I was already planning how I was going to get some more heroin. After extracting a half-hearted pledge from me, promising that I would stay away from drugs, my doctor left the room visibly frustrated but also seemingly relieved to be turning away from such a waste of potential. I was left alone in my small section of the emergency room, partitioned by institutional blue curtains. Quiet, except for passing footsteps, the fleeting strains of overhead conversations, the beeping of machines. The patient next to me was separated only by a thin cotton curtain. I couldn't see him, but I could hear him. The hissing of his ventilator and the rasping of his breath mirrored the steady beating of my heart. I wondered when the sound would end. I was fiending bad. Restlessness and discomfort were creeping up on me. Try as I did to keep the feelings at bay, it was useless. They were as present and real as the damp sweat of my armpits and my own sour morning breath. I lay on the small hospital bed, my hands clasped over my empty, churning stomach, and started to plan my next move, thinking about my resources and what favors I could call in to get my next fix. My reverie was interrupted by quickly approaching footsteps. I sat up hurriedly on the narrow bed. I tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear with my good hand and smiled at my nurse. "Hello," I greeted him with a grin that I hoped came across as casual yet courageous. My nurse walked in with the look of a man who had something important to say. He was in his mid to late 30s, dressed in blue-green scrubs. Perhaps his hairline had already started to recede as he kept his head shaved, yet this only served to emphasize his striking features. His intelligent eyes, which were now trained on me with a look of worry and compassion. Suddenly, I was aware of the distinction between the way my doctor had looked at me, glancing uncomfortably between my chart and my face, and the way my nurse looked at me, holding my gaze steadily with eyes that radiated warmth and concern. Earlier, he had given me my initial examination, which included